Good evening, everyone, and welcome to District 113. Very excited to host this event tonight. So Dr. Marc Brackett is the founding director of the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, professor in the Child Study Center at Yale University, and the author of the 2019 best-selling book, Permission to Feel: The Power of Emotional Intelligence to Achieve Well-Being and Success, and 2025's Dealing with Feeling: Use Your Emotions to Create the Life You Want. Dr. Brackett is the lead developer of Ruler, an evidence-based approach to social and emotional learning that has been adopted by more than 5,000 schools around the globe, and is the author of more than 200 scholarly publications. He has been featured in many prominent media outlets, including the New York Times, the Washington Post, Good Morning America, Today, and the Huberman Lab podcast, and has been the keynote speaker at more than 700 conferences around the world, including ones hosted by the White House, the New York Times, and the Aspen Institute. Dr. Brackett regularly consults with Fortune 500 companies such as Google, Amazon, and Microsoft on best practices for integrating the principles of emotional intelligence into the workplace. In 2022, with Pinterest co-founder Ben Silbermann, Dr. Brackett and his team co-created How We Feel, an award-winning free Apple app designed to teach emotion skills and cultivate emotional well-being. In 2024, he launched the YouTube webcast, Dealing with Feelings. Please help me welcome Dr. Marc Brackett.
Hi, everybody. I know so many of you that I feel weird being here on stage, so I'm going to have to not look at the audience too much. Did that make people feel uncomfortable? So how's everybody feeling tonight? This is a great audience, let me tell you. Well, we've got about an hour or so to talk about regulating emotions. Raise your hand if you feel like you might be a little healthier or happier, even more productive, if you had more strategies or better strategies to deal with your own emotions. Anyone want to? Okay, pretty good. Raise your hand if you'd be a little healthier and happier if everybody who you live with and work with had better strategies to deal with their feelings. Okay. People like other people to do the work, but we're going to do the work ourselves tonight. So I'm going to do a quick kind of bringing you up to speed around the work that we do at the Center for Emotional Intelligence, and then jump into the new work. So many of you are familiar with the Center's work because of a tool like this that we call the Mood Meter. Give me a quick raise of hands. How many have seen this before? Okay, many of you. So I'm not going to spend much time on it tonight, but I just want to remind you that how you feel, in general, is a product of two things. It's what's going on for you here in your mind. From the moment you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed at night, you're looking at yourself, you're looking in environments, and you're making inferences. Do I feel like approaching this person this day? Do I feel like avoiding this person or this day? Like tonight, you are having a feeling. Some of you may have been told to be here. So you're having strong feelings about that, right? Others of you are like, I've been waiting all week. There's been nothing else other than I'm looking for. I mean, like, to hear Marc speak about emotions again, like, what else could there be? I mean, like, so where are you tonight? Quick check-in on that x-axis. Approach, avoid, comfortable, uncomfortable, pleasant, unpleasant. On the y-axis, it says energy. So energy is your physical and your mental energy. Do you feel depleted of all your resources, or do you feel like you've got lots of energy and are ready to take over the world? Just to be frank, my looking at this audience, it's like, you know, if I could hope for more energy, I would just, maybe I should just say that out loud. So what's your energy like right now? -5, you're in your deepest pool of despair. +5, you just can't contain yourself. All right. So those of you who know this tool know that we don't just walk around saying, pleasant energy or yellow, red, blue, or green. We have to get granular. So I'm going to ask you right now to check in. How are you feeling? What's the emotion that's going through your mind right now? What's the word that best describes how you're feeling? Quick raise of hands. How many of you had a little trouble with the precise word? Raise your hands. Okay, good 70%. Something to think about. Why are we here, 100 or so educated people? I'm just asking one simple question, how are you feeling? But yet, finding that word is not as easy as it might seem it should be. What are your thoughts about that? If I were to push you on that. How many of you feel like when you were growing up, like when you were coming down the stairs, coming to breakfast, your mom or dad, whoever took care of you was like, honey, I'm noticing a different facial expression than normal this morning. How are you feeling, honey? I'm fine, Dad. Fine, Dad, I'm fine. Honey, that's not your fine face. Come on. Let's have breakfast together and let's check in. Just with a quick check-in. I'm actually quite preoccupied, son, because I've got this big meeting at work and I'm feeling a little apprehensive about it. How are you doing? Dad, I'm fine. Come on. Let's get granular with our feelings. Okay, Dad, I'm nervous. Nervous? Okay, what are you nervous about? Oh, so you have that upcoming test. So is that, you might be feeling similar to me, a little apprehension. Or is it overwhelmed? Are you stressed? Are you anxious? Do you know the difference, son? The psychological difference between anxiety, stress, pressure, fear, and overwhelmed? Now, of course, that would be a weird household. But the truth is that part of the work is having that granularity as parents and for ourselves. Because what we say in our center is you have to label it to regulate it. If you don't know really how you're feeling, you won't necessarily know what to do with those feelings. So that's the next question. How many of you at some point during my talk will get distracted? Be honest. Okay, many of you. Wonderful. It's like, welcome to, what is this town? Highland Park? Is that right? The land of emotionally illiterate, attention deficit disordered parents. Yay! It's so great to be here. It's like I love to present to self-aware people who don't pay attention, or unself-aware people. It's all right, I can get through it. So my question for you now is, what's your strategy? Knowing that you will get distracted, maybe you'll get tired, it's late. It is late. It's hard to come out at 7 o'clock at night on a Wednesday. So when you notice yourself drifting or shifting, what's going to be your strategy to become the best possible learner? Anyone have a strategy? What are you doing?
Taking notes.
You're taking notes. Great. Others? You're taking notes too?
Listening.
You're going to listen and take notes.
Focused but unsure if we're supposed to talk back to you or risk getting sent to the office.
Yeah, well, you didn't raise your hand. You talked out of turn.
My apologies. My apologies.
So maybe you will go to the office. Okay, so be impulsive. That was a joke, by the way. Other strategies. No one else has a strategy to get the most out of tonight.
I'm going to listen and then read the book.
But you can't read the book during my presentation.
That's my plan, my strategy.
Your strategy is to look forward to reading it?
I'm going to listen to you tonight.
Okay.
And then I'm going to read the book.
All right, thank you. So you're kind of like preparing for that. Yes? You have the app open. You're checking in.
With my feelings throughout my meta feelings.
Wow, you're going to be checking in with your feelings about how you're feeling, about feeling here. Okay, she takes this very seriously. Other strategies, one more. Yes? You're going to do a breath mint. Okay, whatever it takes. I can just let you know I'm not feeling it, but it's good. Okay, so we've got, yes?
Relate what you're saying to your everyday life.
Nice. So you're going to try to make it relevant and meaningful. Nice. How many of you feel like when you were growing up, in terms of the school day, Think about this for a moment. If you have children, even if you don't have children, you know children who go to school. They wake up in the morning, yes, usually, and then they get on the bus or you drive them to school and they walk into that door and they look around and they feel something, like I belong here, I don't belong here. Just like when you go to work. How many of us feel that way when we go to work? Like, I see myself here, I don't see myself here. I feel welcome, I don't feel welcome. That's before you even start learning for the day. Then you got class 1, class 2, class 3, class 4, math, language arts, social studies, gym, phys ed, lunchtime, music, art, whatever you're doing throughout the day. Can you imagine your kids having feelings throughout the school day? Everybody just nod yes, please. Because they do, right? There are feelings about what they're learning. They have feelings about who's sitting next to them. They have feelings about their teacher. They have feelings about what to do with the content they're learning when they're in the hallways. The list goes on. And how many of you think they're getting like the best possible education to manage those emotions effectively to achieve their academic goals? How many of us got that? Now, it's interesting. I did this exercise in New York City a couple of weeks ago. And we did a different exercise where I had parents really think about how their kids felt each day, which I'll share with you the results. It was mostly tired, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, bored. And then this one guy in the audience, a parent, he goes, Mark, hasn't it always been that way? And I'm like, well, maybe, but is that the way we want it to be? Like, I don't know if that's like the recipe for innovation and creativity and world change is having everybody feel this way each day and not have strategies to deal with it. So, with that said, we're going to jump in today. Everybody take a nice inhale for me. Just settle in. I think it's important to know the why behind the work. And in our center, we talk about 5 reasons why all of this matters. And none of it has to do with my opinion. I have very strong opinions about everything. But you shouldn't care about my opinion. You should care about what the research shows. And the research shows 5 really important things for you. How you feel and how you deal with your feelings is directly linked to your attention right now. So if you're bored with my presentation, it's possible. I can't imagine that would be the case. But it's possible. You may have other stuff going on. You may think, oh, I can do this better than Mark, which is not true, by the way. But it's okay. But you might get bored. You might get frustrated. You might get stressed. Think about it. The strongest emotion usually wins. In your life, the strongest emotion is where your attention will go. If you are frustrated about something that's really important to you, if you're overwhelmed, if you're scared, your attention system goes to solve that problem. Does that resonate with people? It's just the way our biology is created. And so if we don't have strategies to manage those feelings, what happens is that they take over. They have power over us instead of us having the control or power over them. The second is decision making. Think about this. How many have ever made a bad choice? Come on. I mean, this is a really, this is like everybody afraid of being called out on something here. My hunch is that we've all made bad choices in life, myself included. As parents, has any parent in this room ever said something unkind to their own child? Okay, at least we're admitting that we're not kind. I'm kidding. And how many of you, when you said that in that moment of unkindness to your kid, like, I can't take it anymore. Anyone ever get that way? Has anyone ever clenched their fist and said that? Anybody ever make that weird facial expression? Okay. In the moment when you're doing that, how many of you believe that you are consciously saying, I am intentionally going to make this really weird facial expression that's going to scare the shit out of my kid. And I'm doing it because I'm feeling angry. No, because otherwise you wouldn't do it. Do you follow? Like if you were able to kind of be in the hot air balloon looking down at yourself and you knew that you were going to make this weird facial expression that was going to be intimidating and create fear in your own kid, and you'd be dysregulated by yelling and screaming and saying things that you're going to regret later, you wouldn't do it. Am I right? Yes. So our emotions, oftentimes, when they are intense, they cause us to react in ways that we often regret. But if you have strategies to better regulate them, you make fewer of those mistakes. You're going to make mistakes, but you'll make a lot less of them, a lot fewer of them. The third is relationship quality. Has anyone here ever had a difficult relationship? Anyone in the third row ever worked with someone who's difficult? I mean, I don't know about you, but anybody who I've ever worked with or for that has been difficult, it's never been because they didn't understand the concepts. It's always because of the way they make me feel. Does that resonate? It's the facial expressions they make when you're in a meeting. It's the tone of voice they use when you're talking with them. It's the way they give feedback that makes you feel demoralized or uncomfortable or inferior or disrespected. That's a form of self-regulation or dysregulation. The fourth is physical and mental health. That's a tough one these days because, as we know, I'll just give you the college student data. Every year now, it's been 20 years that I've been kind of full-time professor. Every year, literally every year for the last 20 years at Connecticut University, not just my university, which is a kind of a unique little place because it's Yale, but across public, private, community colleges, what we found is on average 10 to 15% increase in students receiving treatments for mental health problems. So when I started at my university, there was a counseling center, social support center, had 7 psychologists, counselors. This year, over 40. That's a big difference. That's not sustainable. And so something is in the milk, something is in the political atmosphere, something is in the world that is causing us to have more anxiety and uncertainty than ever before. And we'll get into that in a minute. The last one is a big one. It's about goal attainment. How many of you, when you think about your biggest hopes for your kids, hope they achieve their goals? Yes? If you don't want your kids to achieve goals, please leave. No, I want my kid to never achieve anything. And I'm here to tell you that the cognitive ability, the creative abilities are only half the battle. It's 50% is cognitive ability or creativity. At a certain point, cognitive ability doesn't matter. At a certain point, creativity doesn't matter. And here's the reason why. Because the skills you need to complete things are different than the ones you need to create them or think about them. Imagination is one thing. That's a creative process. But to have a product, you need different skills. Because in the creative process, you're using emotions to fuel it. But to complete the product, when there's uncertainty, when there's critical feedback, when there's people who disagree with you, when nobody wants to support you, when you get anxious, when you get disappointed, if you don't have the ability to deal with that piece of it, all I see over and over again as a professor is people not achieving their dreams. They give up because they can't deal with the feelings, the disappointment, or the shame, or the even sometimes humiliation. Whatever strong emotions exist, they can't deal with the feeling piece of it. They have all the creative potential, all the cognitive ability, but they don't have the emotion skill to deal with all the the people who get in the way. Even in my own work, I think about it all the time. When I got involved in this field of social and emotional learning 30 years ago, I mean, I was like Willie Loman. Do you ever see that? You know what I'm talking about, The Death of a Salesman? I was like this guy. I had a roller bag, literally, with like little booklets of my curriculum and posters, and I'd walk through New York City, and I'd be like, banging on print. Would you like to talk about your feelings? No. Would you like to teach your kids how to deal with emotions? No. And if you don't, like all that rejection, what do? You have to deal with it. You have to have coping strategies. If you're an artist in any field. Again, I ask you to think about now in the context of helping your children achieve their dreams in life. Do you think they've cultivated enough of those resilient skills to support them in all of that dream attainment? What do you think? Probably not. It just hasn't been thought of as a critical aspect of education. I think we need to make that change. And I think that it can't be seen as an add-on. It can't be like, Thursdays at 3, we're going to sit in a circle and talk about our feelings, and then talk about what it means to be a good friend. Doesn't seem like it gives it enough gravitas. Okay. Everyone, take another nice long inhale. I have to do that so I have time to get back to the PowerPoint. So in our center, we have a framework. We call it RULER. And RULER stands for 5 skills. They're the skills of emotional intelligence. Recognizing emotions, understanding emotions, labeling, expressing, and regulating. And so my first book, which is called Permission to Feel, what I did in that book is I kind of made the case for this, kind of spelled out all the science behind that, and I taught the first 4 of the skills, the R, U, L, and E. And then the pandemic hit. And I was in the middle of running around talking about my book, and then all of a sudden the world kind of stopped. And I've shared this before, so some of you might have heard it, but just to put it into context, it's March of 2020, and my very close colleague was getting married on March 7th, and my mother-in-law came from Panama to the wedding because she loves my colleague. And we didn't know that Irene, who lives in Panama, we thought she'd spend 2 weeks with us. And then all of a sudden, March 13th came, Yale shut down, so did United Airlines, and so did every other airline. And so Irene was not capable, she was capable, she was unable to go back to Panama. And we thought, we'll get her on a flight in April. No flights in April. In May, in June, in July, in August. And so my mother-in-law, who was supposed to stay for 2 weeks, ended up spending 7 months with us. And, I love her. I'm very lucky I speak Spanish, so we can communicate. But it got kind of ugly in our house. And also running a center that was kind of going through a lot in terms of like 35, 40 people working from home. It was virtual, it was hybrid, it was back to virtual, it was hybrid. We're going back, we're not going back. Everybody's spraying their groceries with Windex. I mean, it was like lunacy time. And I'm not someone who likes to work from home. I like to I like to be in the world. I also like, I'm a hot yoga guy. And so you can imagine like hot yoga studios during the pandemic. It's not really like, nobody's like doing heavy breathing in a hot room, closed. And so no hot yoga. I learned every single park in Connecticut because I would go for walks every day. But my mother-in-law and I got into some serious situations. And I always joke because this is a true story. There was just one night where she looked at me and she goes, "Are you really the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence?" And I just looked at him like, "Not tonight, honey, not tonight." And so that really was an eye-opening moment for me because I will not repeat what I said to her, nor what she said to me, nor what everybody else in the house was thinking and feeling and doing. But I did go to bed that night and I said, "But Mark, you are the director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence. This is your whole career. You teach people the skills." And I couldn't access them. Can I get a raise of hands for anyone in the room who's ever had that kind of experience? It's like, and it's like that moment where you're like, I know I shouldn't say this, but, I shouldn't say this. I know it's not correct. I'm not going to say it. And you're, and I had that problem. And I think a lot of people were. So in that next few days, I made this commitment to be the best version of myself, which was work. But I also did research. And I launched all these surveys, and about 20,000 people around the United States and other countries, and I was asking them, what are you struggling with? How are you dealing with the fear and the anxiety and the stress? Not well, fairly bad. I'm drinking more alcohol than ever before. And so what I learned was people were not very regulated. Do any of these strategies look familiar to you? Is that like a foreign language to you, or are you just staring in shame? Pretty much, right? Raise your hand if you have a slight tendency, very rarely once in a while, to avoid someone who you really should have a difficult conversation with, but you're just like, I can wait. Anybody? Yeah. All right, raise your hand if, very infrequently, but once in a while, you kind of eat fatty or sugary foods to make yourself feel a little better. Okay. Raise your hand if you've turned once in a while, and every couple of years, to an extra alcoholic beverage to manage your feelings. The people are like, I'm not going to share that one. Raise your hand if you ever engage in self-criticism. Like, I'm such an idiot, why did I do this? I'm never going to get smart, I'm never going to do this. Okay. Raise your hand if you ever find yourself lost in doom scrolling. Okay. Raise your hand if you ever have just said, like, I'm just going to give up, I'm just going to, like, binge watch movies and just go through. Okay, wow, you really need help here. So, where did you learn those strategies? Where's the master's degree in avoidance and alcohol and overeating? Mom and Dad? Yeah. Anyone else? I mean, honestly, why do you think these are the automatic go-to strategies that we use when we're stressed and overwhelmed and fearful and anxious?
Because they work.
They do work. Thank you. And they work great for the long term for your marriage, right? I'm just going to engage in avoidance for my whole relationship. But what do you think? They're easy. It's easy, like, yeah. So they're easy. What else? They're available, right? Easy, they're readily available. They're normalized. It's kind of like, this is what we see this all the time. They're advertised. They can say more about that. Oh, so like the stuff that like the social media, the movies, just like you can get lost in it. So it's like kind of numbing, it's a form of avoidance in many ways too, right? What else?
Immediate satisfaction.
Immediate satisfaction, great. So there is some gratification. Like, has anyone ever said, like, go blank yourself? It feels good, right? I got power. And then you lost the friendship. So what's the downside of these strategies?
The problem's still there.
Yeah, the problem is still there, so they're not very solution-focused. What else?
Exacerbate the problem.
They can exacerbate the problem. What else? They're addictive. Great point. What else? Many of them shorten your lifespan. Exactly. They tend to be harmful to self and other people. How many of you know, like, this is not like the recipe for having a great marriage or being a great parent or being a great colleague? Okay. So the question is, how do we unlearn those or replace them with healthy strategies? By the way, the kids aren't doing so well either. If you're a parent or a teacher in the room, do these look at all familiar to you? We're going to keep politics out of the room, but we're not going to disagree. So impulse control, tantrums, excessive crying. This is the stuff when we go to schools and hear from educators and school leaders. Ed Week, just a couple months ago, had a huge series of articles on this, that principals feel like they're losing their teachers because the teachers can't handle the dysregulation, which is causing the teachers to be dysregulated, and the list goes on. So why emotion regulation? Why now? Well, I think there's 3 reasons why. The first goes back to some of the unhelpful strategies that we're using. I don't know about you, but I don't watch television at all at home. When I travel, I have an addiction to television. For some reason, it's like I have this thing. I get in my comfortable bed at the hotel, and I turn on the news, and I go to fall asleep with the news, and I wake up with the news. And I feel like I have agita. Because it's like, breaking news, something else happened, breaking news. Everything's breaking news, and everything's negative. And I don't know if you're watching that or looking at that on your social media all day, of course it's going to cause cortisol hits in your body. That's what it does. That's what it's designed to do. The second is from 24 news cycles to outrage feeds to political polarization. I don't know about how you think about this, but when I think about the kids in our country today, for the last 20 years at least, there's been wars, whether it's in Afghanistan or it's in Ukraine or it's in Israel and Gaza, everywhere. They're just seeing constant death, to be honest with you, and violence. And then the violence itself, I think, has been worse it's ever been. One of the things I just want to say about violence is that oftentimes people equate violent behavior or aggressive behavior with being mentally ill. But the science does not support that. The science supports that everyday people, when they are in a position of feeling extreme unpleasant emotions, especially the ones that are what we call the self-conscious emotions, like shame and humiliation. This works, by the way, for self-harm and other harm. That most children, unfortunately, in the worst scenario, who decide to take their lives, they are not children with mental health problems. They are kids who have a moment in a bullying experience where they lose it, where the humiliation, the shame is so strong, they cannot cope any longer, and they decide to make a very, very bad decision for their health and well-being. The same thing applies to the aggressor. The point I'm making here is that it's preventable. It's preventable if we take seriously teaching kids the skills they need to navigate their emotions and creating the conditions for them to be their true selves. So I'm on a mission, just so you know, and the real reason why I wrote this book is that I had an epiphany, which is that maybe we should redefine what it means to be successful. Because in our society, I'm traveling around. There's some pretty nice houses around here, just so you know. Fancy houses, multi-million-dollar homes. People drive cars with beautiful little symbols on them. They have wallets that are very thick. And we tend to think of that as being success. That when you make a lot of money, or you have a prestigious job, or whatever it is. And, let's be real. The research shows, by the way, it correlates very low with general well-being. There's no support that people are happier. You can drive a fancy car and you're still miserable driving that BMW to your private tennis coach. It feels nice to be in the BMW, I'll take one, but the point is it doesn't really correlate with your happiness or well-being. But what if we were to reimagine what it meant to be successful as leaders, teachers, parents, who were just amazingly well-regulated? And not only well-regulated for themselves, but they created the conditions to support other people in being well-regulated. Take a moment and think about that, please. What would be different in our society if we were thinking about that as a criteria of success? That you were the best possible role model for being a well-regulated adult and someone who showed compassion and was supportive to other people. What do you see differently in a society where that becomes the criteria? Yes?
Personally, I feel like there wouldn't be homelessness because somebody who felt that success was not letting someone be homeless.
Okay. So we see.
I feel that it's a tough subject because there's people that want to be homeless.
Of course, but there would be less people without, housing. What else do you see? Yes? More happiness and joy. Thank you. What about this? What do you think if all of the policymakers in our society had a checklist that made them realize the impact of their policies on children's healthy development? Do you think we'd behave differently as a society? No? Yes? I think it'd be a very different world if we actually took seriously children's nervous systems. If we understood how nervous systems develop and how a dysregulated nervous system causes a life of chaos and difficulty for people, an adult who can't regulate their nervous system, who can't downregulate that strong feeling, is a very unhappy adult in general. And if we were to ensure that what we were doing was supporting healthy development, it'd be a very different world. So what does that look like? All right, everybody, are you ready for this? Say yes. I'm writing a letter to this. I'm writing a letter to your district just saying this is a difficult audience. So, everyone in the room, this formula is going to save your life. So this is what I call emotion regulation. And I know I only make this formula to make myself feel smart, but it will help you. So emotion regulation is a set of goals and strategies. You got to want to regulate. Think about this. Imagine if we taught people how to prevent unwanted emotions. Instead of waiting for your kid to take the test on Thursday and they're like freaking out in the moment when they're preparing or taking the test, what if they were asked on Monday, like, are you feeling prepared? Are you feeling, well, how are you feeling about taking the test? Oh, I'm kind of worried about it. All right, let's ask you the questions around why you're worried about it, and let's problem solve now so there's no anxiety the day of the test. What if you prepared for that difficult meeting before you got into that meeting with that parent who was really challenging? That's a goal for emotion regulation. We can reduce an emotion in the moment. We can initiate a desired emotion. For example, like right now, I'm dying to initiate an emotion in this room. Like I'm thinking, what is the right emotion to get people to be super engaged at 7:35 p.m. on a Wednesday? And I have not figured that out yet. But my point is that oftentimes, as leaders, as parents, as teachers, emotion regulation is about like calming everybody down. As a matter of fact, in high school, no kid wants to be calm. Their desired emotion is excitement and inspiration. That's what they want to feel in school. Yeah, there are moments when they need to be calm to take the test. But if you ask, like I did, in a massive study of 45,000 high school kids across the United States, they don't want to be told to be calm. They're in a point of their development where they want to be inspired and engaged and excited and exhilarated. But yet we don't love that because that creates too much energy for us. But if you can channel that into productivity, guess what? It makes a huge difference. We can maintain a pleasant emotion. How many of you as parents, or just adults, have ever had a good day? Please raise your hand, Sheila. You have to be a role model, just so you know. Okay, so, and how many of you ever had a good day, and then there's like, I call it the dream stealer. Like the person who kind of like nicks, picks at you, and all of a sudden that good day is not so great anymore. Did we teach people how to bounce back, how to maintain these pleasant emotions? We don't really think about emotion regulation that way. It's generally when we think about emotion regulation, we're thinking about stress and anger regulation. We're not thinking about initiating inspiration or maintaining that sense of contentment. Then there are strategies. So what are the strategies? Well, we'll jump to those and then we'll come back. Everyone, these 8 strategies, these are buckets of strategies, there's a chapter in the book for every one of those bullet points. I promise you, if you can learn these strategies, you will have a different life. And I'm saying that with conviction. The first strategy is not even a strategy. The first strategy is your mindset. Like, do you believe that this is doable? A lot of people don't believe it's doable. So I grew up in a family with 2 parents who loved me like nobody else, who had no understanding of emotional intelligence. So my mother had terrible, terrible anxiety. She was a person who was always having nervous breakdowns, as she called it back in the 70s and 80s. I can't handle it. I can't handle it. I'll have a breakdown. That was her go-to strategy. No matter what I told her, Mom, they're bullying me. They're bullying me. I can't handle it. I'm like, you can't handle it. Look at me. And then my father, who also didn't want to talk about feelings, son, you got to toughen up. Son, he even said to me, and I haven't shared this too many times before, he used to say this, son, I'm going to be real with you. I used to beat kids up like you. I'm like, Dad, I don't know what parent training teaches you that strategy. We call that bad co-regulation now. So my point is, that my father also had this mindset around anger that like he was an angry person. And that when he got angry, he was out of control, but he was accepting of that. So great for him. It wasn't great for everybody else. So he'd say things like, son, this is the way I deal with my anger. You're going to have to learn how to deal with that. Because when I get angry, this is the way I act. Great. Can't wait for you to get angry again. And I guess, Dad, you have no interest in learning anything new that might help you be less angry. So somehow or another, we've got to figure out that mindset work. We've got to shift the narrative around what it means to regulate. That will take work. It's moving in that direction. I actually just worked on another op-ed over the last few days about toxic masculinity and what that means in men and boys these days and how that leads to dysregulation. And it's interesting that I've been on all these different podcasts with dudes, and they're all like actually really curious about like, tell me more about emotion regulation. Tell me more about emotion regulation. So the curiosity actually is coming, which I think is really cool. Next, labeling emotions. So right now I'm going to ask you, what is the psychological difference between anger and disappointment? You got 20 seconds with a partner. Anger versus disappointment. What is it? You could talk to somebody. This is the audience, like, parent share point. Anger versus disappointment. Freeze. Who's got it? Some of you have heard me speak before. Who remembers?
Say it again.
Anger versus disappointment. What is the definitional difference?
Anger is more energizing. Disappointment brings you down.
Okay, thank you. So you're getting at like what it looks like and feels like, but I really want like the definition. Anger means this, disappointment means that.
Anger's about injustice.
Anger is about injustice and disappointment is about?
Unmet expectations.
Thank you. So disappointment is about unmet expectations. Anger is about injustice. So now I am your kid. I come home from school. I hate school. How am I feeling? Anger? Anger? You don't know until you ask. So one of the things that you have to know in terms of helping kids regulate, when you're going to be the co-regulator of a child's emotions, is that behavior does not mean feeling. I've been taught in this toxically masculine world that even if I'm feeling the deep shame or humiliation or anxiety or fear, I got to show up like this, because that's what men do. They get aggressive with all unpleasant emotions. I'm certainly not going to be growing up in New York City and being like, I'm feeling disappointed. I'm feeling shame. Guys aren't going to do that. They're going to act out. They're going to externalize. And what happened in my family, which is, the reason why I'm a psychologist, is I was really badly bullied as a kid. Like I was extorted and I had a broken nose and people were, and I go, I hate school. I'm not going back to school. Who do you think you are talking to me that way? Get to your room. Wait till your father gets home. My mother got triggered by my behavior because she couldn't handle the energy. She couldn't deactivate to co-regulate. Do you follow? She could not bring her emotional temperature down to be curious about my behavior, to find out what I was feeling, to then explore with me the strategies that would have been most helpful to help me deal with my feelings. She got overwhelmed by the energy and by being triggered. And so then my father would come home, he'd come in. That was the best sound of my life. Hearing my father's steps coming up to my bedroom, and then he would come into my room and say, son, if I have to tell you one more time, if you talk to your mother that way, I'm going to lose it. And then my mother, who did have some compassion, it like snuck in once in a while, she'd come into my room with my father being there, and, Billy, that's not the way we should handle things in our household. I'm like, Mom, do you remember what you just did an hour ago? But whatever. And then they would get into a fight. This massive fight, like, Diane, I'm not going to do this anymore, I'm for crying out loud. And Billy, don't do that, that's not the way we should handle things in our house. And they would get into a fight, and then my father would leave. And then my mother would come back into my room, and she'd say, Mark, I'm just going to let you know this right now. I saved you this time. I'm like, okay, this is great. This is a recipe for a Ph.D. in psychology. I mean, seriously. And these are people who had the best intentions. I'm telling you, my parents wanted the best for me, and they love me. They just didn't know how to regulate. They did not have the skill to self-regulate, to be able to help me learn how to regulate. They scared the crap out of me. And they made me have two mindsets. I'm not going to talk ever about my feelings to mom because she'll have a breakdown. So let's not go there because I can't do it. Mom's already got stuff. I'm not going to give her a breakdown. And I'm not going to go here to dad because he's just going to get angry and tell me to toughen up and like do his thing. Do you see how, as parents, the way you talk about feelings, the way you communicate about emotions in your house, the way you do it as a leader, as a teacher, as a partner, is going to create the conditions for the development of the skill in the other? Does that make sense? It's work, though. It's effortful, because the thing that nobody said about these strategies that makes them different than the other ones is that these ones have to be learned and practiced and refined. So once we can quiet our minds and bodies as parents, once we can bring our own temperature down, we can be present. We can ask the questions. You can't ask good questions to your kid if your temperature is too high, emotionally speaking. It doesn't work that way. Biologically speaking, you are in fight-flight mode, not in learning mode. Just like if your kid is being bullied in school or is feeling fear in school and is stressed out on the bus or in a class, when they're in survival mode, they're not in learning mode. It's just not the way our brains operate. So in many ways, it is our moral obligation as parents and teachers to create the conditions for kids to be able to communicate how they're feeling so we can give them strategies to regulate their emotions. Would you agree with that? Yes. That was a lot of work to get you to agree with me. Jeez. So once we can lower that temperature and be more psychologically present, then we can access all the thinking stuff. Mark, you can get through this presentation. Mark, take the high road. Mark, you got bigger fish to fry. Those are important cognitive strategies that we have to learn. You have to learn how to have positive self-talk. I am convinced through 25 years of research that 90% of us have been gaslighted in our childhood. Our realities were created by other people believing they had the right to define our realities for us. You're too fat, you're too skinny, you're too dark, you're too light, you're too feminine, you're too masculine, your nose is too big, whatever it is. It's like you just hear this stuff coming at you from the moment you're born. Nobody teaches you how to sift through that information, and then it becomes the way you see yourself. Because there's no early sifting through people's way of speaking to you intervention strategy. I think about this all the time. I have a niece, Esme, who is my little love of my life. She's not as little Esme. She's graduating from college this year. But she's like my niece because she's my cousin who's kind of like my sister's daughter. She is now 20 years old, but she was adopted from Guatemala. And she's dark-skinned, and her mother is a white, Jewish, redheaded woman who lived in upstate New York, who just was in a very white neighborhood and had a dark child. Long story short is in kindergarten, Esme was terribly bullied, like bad stuff. Like really mean stuff said to her. And the worst of it was when this one young girl in kindergarten said to her, "You're a different color than your mother. That's disgusting." Now, her mother, who is not known for her self-regulation skills, called me and said, "Mark, I knew something was going to happen at some point with Esme, but I'm at the end of my rope. This is like, I'm going to lose it. I'm getting in my Jeep. I'm going over to that kid's house and I'm running over her mother and her." I'm like, take a deep breath. You got to deactivate so you can do the right thing. And I did a road trip up to Binghamton, New York, where they were living. And I want to tell you something that broke my heart. Because I know what it's like to be a kid who has low self-esteem. I know what it's like to be someone who has endless self-doubt. But to see that in a 5-year-old who's saying, "I don't want to go to school, Uncle Mark," why am I such a different color than you and mommy? Now, we're lucky that my family is interracial, biracial, many different races. And so there are people of different skin colors, and we can point it to that and talked about that and how everybody loves Esme. It took us months to get Esme to be wanting to go back to school. It took us months to help her think through that she is worthy, that she is someone of great value. But she had an uncle who has a Ph.D. in psychology coaching her and her mom on a regular basis to work through that negative self-talk and move it to self-compassion, to positive self-talk. And I just think about all the kids in our society who have people saying things all the time. And I just wonder, what is it like for them when they are being gaslighted, when people are mean and cruel and they don't have any resources, or the adults don't even know about it? Because if we don't create the conditions for kids to feel safe and comfortable, they're not going to tell us about it. I was a kid who was a victim of childhood sexual abuse for 5 years before I told anybody. I didn't tell my parents I was being abused. It blows my mind to think about that today, that I was this little boy, and I didn't tell my own parents that some person was violating me. How is that possible? How could we live in a world where kids feel so scared of sharing unpleasant or really dangerous experiences? It blows my mind that we have not figured out how to create the conditions for kids to be authentic and real. And what I found in my research is that it takes that next piece. It takes cultivating emotional strength through relationships. And what I found is that the people who create those conditions have these characteristics. That the people that we feel safe and comfortable talking to about our feelings are not the brightest crayons in the box. They're not the geniuses of our society. They are the people who are non-judgmental. They are the people who listen. And they are the people who show empathy and compassion. And I was in this exact same space, actually, a number of years ago. And I'm having a vivid memory, actually, of a presentation I gave where I presented not these data, but something similar to it. And there was a parent in this room, actually, who looked at me and she goes, "Oh my God, those are like," and I call these the Uncle Marvin characteristics because it was my uncle who helped me come out of my pain. He was a school teacher who I dedicated my first book to, called Permission to Feel. And so I call these the permission to feel characteristics. And so this mom, right in this room, I'll never forget, she was sitting right behind you, sir, and she jumped up out of her seat. She's like, "I have 2 children." I said, "Okay, fabulous. Thanks for sharing." And she goes, "I'm certain that my son has that person in his life, that person who is his Uncle Marvin. And my daughter, I know she doesn't. And I'm leaving here tonight, Mark, and I'm going to find my kid her Uncle Marvin." And I said, "Lady, it could be you." And for some reason, parents are the most resistant to being these people for their own kids. I get it all the time. It's too hard for me to be that. It's better to have an uncle or an aunt or the tennis coach or the neighbor. Someone else can do it, but it's too intimate. It's too intimate, and it's your own kid. So I'm going to ask you to think about this as we wrap today as parents in the room. What is getting in the way of the adults who are raising kids to show up for their kids with these attributes? Why is it so hard to be non-judgmental? Why is it so hard to not listen more? Why is it so hard to show empathy and compassion? Notice it doesn't say fixer. Notice it doesn't say problem solver, advice giver. It's saying, if you put this in a hierarchy, what it's saying is trust and safety. I need to trust you. I need to feel safe. I can then be my true self. Now, there are two more buckets. The last two, the one that says regulation budget. So one of the things that parents tell me is that those characteristics are harder when they don't get enough sleep, when they don't get enough activity, physical activity, when they're not, like, their brains are not in the best place. So for years, I knew about the intersection of we'll call the biology of regulation, the neurochemistry of regulation, and health, or the neurochemistry of eating, sleeping, and physical activity and our physical health. But when I was writing my book, I did a deep dive into how those things affect our ability to regulate. And here's the deal. The less movement you get in your life, the harder it is for you to regulate. Movement generates endorphins that make it easier for you to regulate your emotions and help other people regulate theirs. Knowing how to get the right amount of glucose in your brain throughout the day helps your brain have that power to choose those strategies. Getting enough sleep that's good sleep gives you the restoration that your brain needs to be able to be the best version of yourself in the morning. So you can't deny that piece of it. It's a critical kind of necessary condition for healthy regulation. And finally, in our work, we have a tool. We call it the meta moment. And I end my book with having everyone imagine themselves having an identity. Like, imagine if you saw yourself as the most well-regulated parent or person you ever knew. And that's a tool that is very near and dear to my heart. And so as you think about leaving here tonight and showing up as the best version of yourself for your significant other, for your dog, for your kids, for anybody, you're going to get triggered. I promise you, you're going to get activated by something tonight, tomorrow, the next day. And when you get activated, you know what I've taught you already. You're going to pause, you're going to deactivate, you're going to take that breath, you're going to be as present as possible. But sometimes you need a little extra power. So I remember when my mother-in-law was driving me out of my mind, she was really kind of making me crazy. I would breathe. Now I'm even clearer why I hate you. So I would have I would breathe, I would get calm. I didn't say hate you, I don't hate her, I actually love her. But why I can't stand you, why I need you to get out of my house, whatever it is. And the piece that was missing was my values. Like the self that I wanted to be. Like, how do I want to be seen and talked about and experience this world? After all, I am the director of the Center for Freaking Emotional Intelligence, so I might as well live up to that description, whatever that is. So right now, we're going to wrap up with you thinking about this. Because you're going to go home, and something's going to happen tomorrow or the next day, whatever role you're in, it doesn't matter. And someone's going to push a button, and I'm going to take a breath. And I need another breath. I'm going to walk away. I'm going to step out of the room because I need more breathing. But at some point, you're going to have to face the person that you're dealing with, like your kid. And I'm going to ask you to think right now about the parent, if that's the role you want to pick for tonight, whatever role you want, parent, partner, leader. Please take a moment to think about the following. Finish the stem. As a parent, partner, leader, I want to be seen, I want to be talked about, and I want to be experienced as a person who has these qualities. Right now in your life, make it even more personal. Think about the person you're having the most difficulty with. The person who's really getting under you right now, who's creating the most chaos for you personally or professionally. With that person, how do you want to show up? Imagine you being the best possible role model for that person. How does that person look? What are the attributes of that person? Please put those into your mind. So I'm going to cut the Q&A 5 minutes because I want to take you through a deeper exercise with this. I want you to actually think about a person you are really having difficulty with right now. And a moment in the last week or two where you could have been a better version of yourself. Can everyone find that moment? It could be interpersonal, or it could be your own thing. It could be, I wanted to go to the gym 17 times and I went none. So the better version of yourself would have been someone who showed up at the gym. It could be someone you're working with. It could be your kid. It could be your partner. It could be whatever. But think about a moment in the last 2 weeks where you could have been better at regulating your emotions. Please take that moment now and think about that. And I'm going to make you uncomfortable because I'm going to ask you to live through that for a moment. I want you to revisit the dysregulation. That moment where you said the unkind thing, or you didn't do the thing you said you were going to do, or you made the excuses for not doing whatever you were going to do. And just be with that for a minute. Be with the moment you made the choice to not be the best version of yourself. Okay. The beauty of tonight is that I get to make your movie better. Because now we're going to rewind. And we're going to go back to the moment before you were making the automatic unconscious choice to be dysregulated. But instead, you're going to take a nice long inhale. Everybody take a deep breath together. You're going to build that space between stimulus and response. Maybe you need another inhale. And I want you to visualize yourself as the person with those attributes. Maybe it's patient. Maybe it's loving. Maybe it's caring. Maybe it's compassionate. Maybe it's non-judgmental. Maybe it's the better listener. Whatever it is. But I want you to put yourself in that place of the better version of you. And now, what I want you to do is regulate through that lens. What could be different about the way you handle the situation and the choice you make? Thanks for going through that. Quick question. How many of you could actually visualize a different outcome? Raise your hand. Okay, nice. So it's possible. And this took a couple minutes. But it's a technique that we have to practice and practice and practice and practice and practice. But it's possible. All right, everyone. Lonnie's going to get mad at me if I don't end in about 2 seconds. So we're going to wrap up. Let me ask all of you to take one more big inhale and big exhale. A few little gifts for you before we leave. Number one, if you haven't seen this app that we co-created, please check it out. It's called the How We Feel app. And it is a free app that I co-created with the founder of Pinterest. And we've got about 3.5 million people using it right now. Really helpful to build self-awareness and learn strategies. The second, you heard in my introduction about the web series. Been really fun interviewing some of the world's leading experts about their journey with dealing with emotions. They're about 45-minute episodes where we kind of dive deeply into their experiences either as a scientist or as an artist. And now we're going to wrap. Okay. Raise your hand if you believe that emotions matter. Let me hear the sound in the room. How many of you believe emotions matter? All right, we're working on it. I will argue until the end of the day that we need to give ourselves and everyone else permission to feel. Now, the research shows only about 1/3 of us have someone in our lives, meaning that when we were young, only 1/3 of us believed there was an adult that created the conditions for us to have permission to feel. Now, I'll share with you one last thing about that. I've had people get very upset at my presentations. Well, now I know why I'm messed up, because I didn't have permission to feel. And I'm like, I understand that you may be uncomfortable right now because you wish you had had someone when you were young who gave you the permission to feel. But I'm here to tell you that it is never too late. Because at some point, you have to look in the mirror and say, I'm going to give myself permission to feel. And guess what? What the research shows is that when you show up and you are that Uncle Marvin for someone else, they benefit so greatly that you benefit from their benefit. Lastly, emotion regulation is 100% learned. Sorry to tell you this. You were not born that way. You have to learn this stuff. You got to practice it, and you're going to refine it over the course of your life. I'm going to tell you that as educators and parents, the co-regulation piece is really important. We didn't get into much of that tonight. It's written about in the book a lot. Every one of those 8 buckets are not just for you. It is your responsibility as the healthy adult, the healthy role model, to support children learning every one of those buckets and making them age appropriate for their healthy development. And I'll just say that striving to be the best versions of ourselves is effortful, but it is worth it. What the research shows is that just better health, better relationships, better goal attainment. And actually, the most recent research on healthy emotional regulation shows that it actually predicts longevity. You will live a longer, healthier, and happier life if you develop the skills of emotion regulation. So on that note, everyone, look around the room. Just look around the room. Some weird people in here, but it's okay. So I got 100, maybe 150 people in here, all kind of motivated to learn about healthy emotion regulation. My last few words for you are the following. Oftentimes I do talks like this, and I share a lot about my own vulnerability. I share about my own childhood traumatic experiences, and some people get nervous that, like, oh my gosh, like that's a lot to share. A lot of dudes say, like, God, like you're really vulnerable, dude. And I say, like, it took me till I was like 49 to write my first book, so it didn't come so early. It took a long time. The second is that people say, but you're successful. You've dealt with the trauma, you've dealt with the bullying. You're like, look at you, you're successful. And I say, yes, I feel very successful and blessed that way. However, I had Uncle Marvin. I also have a 5th degree black belt in a martial art. I also have a Ph.D. in psychology. I've also spent 30 years of my life writing curriculum and writing books and writing articles and teaching this stuff. I put a lot of effort into my own healthy emotional development. I cannot expect that of every kid in our society. So the reason why I share that is that our center, the work we do, is we translate all that stuff into curriculum, into books, to help you bring that to kids from preschool all the way to high school. And so my last words for you are that if we do agree, which I hope you do, that it's our obligation to ensure that children get this education, then all of us here have to be the best possible role models for that. Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody.